Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. As we're set to liberate the latest here in Israel, particularly also vis-a-vis the Gaza Strip, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, as well as the Yemeni file, it's always important to highlight. Today we mark day 600 since the atrocities committed by Hamas and its terror affiliates on October 7th of 2023. Naturally, there are still 58 hostages in Hamas captivity, 600 days, up to 20 of them alive, believed to be alive. On that and more, let's introduce our experts for today, to include Amir Oren, our TV7 editor-at-large. It's good to see you. And, of course, Brigadier General in Reserve, Dr. Amnon Sofrin, formerly the Chief of Mossad's Intelligence Directorate and a senior officer at the IDF Intelligence Directorate. It's great to see you as well, sir. And I'd like to start with you, Amir. 600 days, 20 hostages still alive, families at home hoping to see their loved ones, as well as hoping to have a proper burial of their loved ones, the ones that have not made it, unfortunately, due to Hamas's murderous atrocities during the course of those 600 days. Where are we currently when we're talking about the negotiations process? There are talks being held, but those are limited and the people involved are quite tight-lipped.
Indeed, and as you described it, Jonathan, lives are in limbo, especially, of course, the hostages, those 20 hostages who are presumably in tunnels held by Hamas, perhaps also in some of the refugee camps, especially the so-called central Gaza camps, the Deir el-Balach area and vicinity, and their families. Everyone is looking for every bit of news coming either out of Washington, where the Minister for Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, and Mossad Chief David Barnea are right now in conversations with their counterparts in the Trump administration, following their meeting in Rome with presidential envoy Steve Witkoff, who is heading both the negotiations with Hamas as well as with the Iranian negotiations on the separate matter of the Iranian nuclear file. And there are contradictory reports one day or sometimes 1 hour. Optimistic reports come out regarding the possibility of some interim agreement in which 10 hostages will be released, either immediately on the first day of a 60-day ceasefire, or 5 on the first day and 5 on the last day, which means that the last 10 living hostages will be still in Hamas captivity more than 660 days. And the next hour, there are reports that Hamas rejected the new proposal, which is the old one, but with some minor provisions. And the families do not know whom to turn to. But let me suggest that because of some external event now happening between the United States and Russia, the frustration, which is quite felt by President Trump regarding the Russia-Ukraine talks, he will now double his efforts to get both the Gaza and the Iran talks to succeed, because he needs an achievement.
Well, he aspires to have an achievement, that is true. I'm not sure that it's going to change discourse on this aspect, considering the fact that there are other considerations at play, and the one that ultimately is pushing back and demanding to survive within the current capacity is no other than the Islamist Hamas. Since the last ceasefire, namely in March, there were 17 proposals, all of which were rejected by Hamas. something that also needs to be taken into account. So 17 proposals in which Hamas said no, and coming back with its own proposals, which are preposterous in essence, considering reality on the ground. Nonetheless, General Sofrian, I'd like to hear your take on this specifically, and also from another angle, the humanitarian aid distribution centers, at least two of them in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, in Al Sultan and in the Murad corridor in the southern part of the enclave, have become operational. Some 8,000 packages were distributed yesterday, which entail roughly 4,000 or 462,000 meals just in one day. Today, I hear from people that are on the ground over there that it's going quite well. And the American ambassador here, Mike Huckabee, came out and said that it seems, at least at this point in time, as quite effective.
Let me begin with that issue because I think this is what we call a turning point in this war. The fact that somebody else is giving humanitarian aid or delivering humanitarian aid to the residents of Gaza and not Hamas, and Hamas is not controlling it. Hamas cannot take its own part, cannot sell it in higher prices to gain more income. Therefore, Hamas is losing what we call some of its power upon the people of Gaza. They try to deny them from getting into these specific points and to get what we call the humanitarian aid. But the people in Gaza are what we call the survivability is more stronger. And therefore they go there and they get whatever they need for the first time. And that reduces Hamas captivity and Hamas capability to control Gaza more effectively. And this is the beginning of a process. And we have to look, and we know that two more points are going to be opened very soon. And humanitarian aid is going, in addition, from the northern part of Gaza via what we call the border crossings between Gaza and Israel. And therefore, the people in Gaza begin to understand that they don't depend only on Hamas to get what they need. The second issue is that what we call an armed militia that is called itself an organization that is going to fight terrorism, was established very close to Rafah. People from Rafah, 300 people. This is the assessment right now. All of them are armed. They had military experience or military drills and trainings. And they said that they're threatening to attack Hamas positions in Rafah and in Khan Yunis. And this is another phase of what we call the people of Gaza begin to differ themselves from the people of Hamas, or Hamas control or dominance on Gaza. And this is what we call a good sign. And we have to look forward to see what happens next. Israel must take advantage on that and present some kind of a solution. Or who is going to control Gaza? To take advantage of that, that means Hamas is beginning to weaken, not only militarily, but also on the civilian side. And therefore, we have to take advantage of that and to come out with a good proposal of who is going to control Gaza, coordinated with whoever needs it. And this will be what we call a very bad strike on Hamas, apply a lot of pressure on it. I'm not sure that this is going to bring back all the people immediately, but it adds to the pressure, to the military pressure that is now applied on Hamas.
I think it's important to highlight the date, the 27th of May. People need to remember that date as the turning point or the start of the end of the Islamist Hamas. The 2 points you just mentioned are indeed, from a tactical perspective, I think brilliantly implemented. And if there is indeed, to capitalize on this tactical achievement, to insert it within a broader strategy that ultimately will bring about a shift of the discourse in the Gaza Strip, it will really be remarkable to see such an achievement implemented. I don't think many people who The majority, of course, don't theorize on military affairs very often, but nonetheless, this is a masterpiece at play, and Hamas is noticing this. There is a growing pressure on Hamas in the field and the political Politburo, if we may call it that, in Qatar and in Turkey. They also notice this, and they are trying to apply pressure on their own people in Gaza to reach a certain arrangement. It seems like it's still falling on deaf ears, since Mohammed Sinwar was just replaced with another individual. He's called Hamdallah, right, General Sofrin?
I think so.
Right. Hamdallah, who used to be the commander of the Gaza Brigade, recently he replaced his predecessor.
No, Hamdallah. Al-Hatib.
El-Hativ, excuse me. You're right. But specifically there, he now needs to prove himself. So naturally, if he succumbs on the first day, he will be regarded as Naim Qasim, who replaced Nasrallah and immediately opted for a ceasefire, realizing that he's losing control. But Mr. Oren, when we're talking about the United Nations in this context, it continues to reject its involvement. I have been trying to figure out from the inner works of the United Nations what's happening there and what is the true merit, not just the rhetoric that they're voicing. And somebody mentioned to me UNRWA. UNRWA is obviously a very crucial point for the United Nations, since Israel has passed legislation not to work with them anymore. And at the same time, it's becoming less and less effective in its capacity to actually be involved, both in Judea, Samaria, the Jordan Valley, but also specifically now in the Gaza Strip. And in such an event, it might become a mute organization altogether.
Well, Jonathan, this coming October, the world will mark the 80th anniversary of the United Nations organization. There were so many naive expectations following the end of the Second World War that the global community will not repeat the failure of the League of Nations at the end of the First World War. There will be this world body, an honest broker in charge of world peace. But as we know, reality was less optimistic, less favorable to justice and equality. The UN has its own organizational interests. The Secretariat General, the various agencies, UNICEF, UNESCO, and UNRWA, as well as the various forces, ANDOF on the Golan Heights, UNIFIL in South Lebanon, and they go with the stronger party, or when there are many states parties to the United Nations against one, Israel, and they have thousands of employees, and they have their own budget to protect, they go with that. So we shouldn't expect UNRWA to be an impartial, objective player here in this deadly game.
Indeed. Well, of course, the allegations against it regarding its employees partaking on October 7th, 2023, and the atrocities committed on the people of southern Israel has brought about a certain discourse also within the international community. What is surprising to me that Sweden is the only one that has permanently ended all funding to UNRWA. Some countries have resumed partial funding, but nonetheless, the United States has not yet permanently banned UNRWA. In light of the fact that that was the previous administration that sought to reform it in one way or another. Failing to do so, nonetheless, the freeze remains since mid-2024, and it continues as such. With regard to what you said about the United Nations, I couldn't agree more. And in my view, it's about totalitarian regimes and democratic societies. Free societies cannot be put on equal footing within an international institution. It just isn't compatible. But General Soflin, let's shift gears to Lebanon, since we do see, on the one hand, Prime Minister Nawaf Salam coming out and saying that the age of Iranian meddling and distribution of munitions and arms in Lebanon has come to an end, and Israel continues to vigorously enforce a ceasefire. Can we be optimistic?
I think that we have to look very carefully on the processes that are going over Lebanon. On one hand, we see that Hezbollah is weakened. Hezbollah doesn't receive weapon systems like it used to have from Iran. That means that the land corridors are sealed, the naval corridors are sealed, and we control the air and we don't allow, and even the Lebanese don't allow Iranian planes to land in Lebanon. And when they land, they're being checked out, and if you find money or weapon systems, they're being sent away. And therefore, Hezbollah cannot arm himself or rearm himself very, very carefully or very deeply, just like they did before. That's a. Second one is that they are willing to discuss with the Lebanese government the fact that they will disarm some of its capabilities, not totally, and of course, dependent on negotiations between them and some agreements. Now, just bear in mind that Abu Mazen visited Lebanon last week. He met with President Aoun, and he applied to the people or the Palestinians at the refugee camps to give up the weapon system to the government. It's like he declared that this is like what he wants to see on the Palestinian Authority. One authority and one weapon system. That means only one entity should be armed, and not every group will have its own weapon systems. And I believe that we see what we call good signs in Lebanon. We have to watch carefully, because the Iranians, I'm not sure that the Iranians gave up totally on Lebanon and its influence on Hezbollah. And they will try to make any effort to rearm it and to support it and to rebuild its capabilities, to be able to launch some kind of attacks on Israel, which is limited capabilities right now, but nevertheless to be what we call one more card in its pocket. And the second issue is to watch and see how determined the Lebanese government is, and the president, of course, is to dismantle all this organization from the weapon systems, and only to have the Lebanese army as the sole, what we call armed group within the country of Lebanon.
Indeed. Well, there are circulating reports, not necessarily all of them are public, but nonetheless, there are circulating reports of smuggling routes from Libya, from Sudan, from other locations trying to penetrate the naval blockade that the Lebanese are quite vigorously trying to enforce in collaboration here, both with UNIFIL, the Coast Guard there, as well as with Turkey, which has a couple of vessels in the area. Of course, there is some friction at times between Turkey and Israel from a naval perspective, something that should be, of course, taken into context also with a Syrian file, but nonetheless, there are ongoing deconfliction discussions under Azeri auspices between Ankara and Jerusalem, something that hopefully will yield fruit. Naturally, there's never a hermetic blockade from the smuggling of weaponry, but nonetheless, the extensive efforts that are apparent, we are very hopeful to see them continuing, and this, of course, diminishes the capacity from infusing large quantities of munitions, something that an organization like Hezbollah is requiring. But nonetheless, Mr. Oren, the Iranians are not sitting idly by, naturally, and they have their proxy in Yemen doing its work for it at this point in time. In recent days, we saw a couple of ballistic missiles launched towards Israel. Today, Israel reacts. Tell us more about that.
So, many Israeli citizens, perhaps most of the 10 million Israelis or so, have gotten used to the fact that after midnight, sometimes their own cities, towns, or rural areas are pierced by air and missile red sirens. But then the IDF spokesman announces that the Israeli Air Force has successfully intercepted a missile launched by the Houthis, and people go back to sleep. They accept it as one more nuisance, one more harassment, like dogs barking in their neighborhood or loud music played by youngsters. And except for that missile which landed in the Ben Gurion Airport compound, not on the tarmac itself or any of the facilities, but close enough to scare off airlines. Short of that, this has become part of the reality. Now, the Israeli response, including earlier today, has been a series of Air Force strikes, which incidentally are very good exercises in case Israel decides to send its Air Force east rather than south towards Tehran rather than Sana'a. But as Minister of Defense Israel Katz announced, this is a sort of a biblical siege for siege operation. The Houthis have forced a blockade on the southern port of Eilat, and therefore Israel is striking the ports, both the seaports and the airport in Yemen. So it's retaliation. We haven't seen any immediate result. Maybe the Houthis will stop launching missiles, but this will not open the Bab el-Mandeb Strait to shipping to and from Eilat. So the utility of this counter operation is still in doubt.
Well, the Houthis came out and stated following the strike on Sana'a International Airport, striking specifically a large airliner that was used by Ansar Allah for the transit of its various terror operatives, that they will continue to fight until the Day of Judgment. So they apparently, their Day of Judgment is undoubtedly a lot sooner than ours, but that's a different story. General Sofrin, we don't have very much time left, and tonight, just for the sake of our viewers, we will have an extensive discussion with Dr. Oli Heinonen and Professor Russell Berman and Colonel Ben Shalom, who will be sitting here in for Amir Oren. We will discuss more about Iran's nuclear program, the negotiations, the challenges related to this. But if we can just get a couple of previews to this discussion, General Sofrin, it seems like the Iranians are very desperate to reach a deal, but they believe that in this current discourse, applying pressure on the Americans to accept a certain formula in which they could enrich uranium, they would be able to persevere. Is that reality something the Americans can accept?
Okay. There is a big gap between declarations and between what happens during the negotiations between the two delegations. And I'm not sure that we know all the facts, but I can guess or assess, I can guess, it's only assessment, that they will reach some formula that will, in the end, enable Iran to keep some kind of enrichment to what we call a very low level and very limited capabilities under full inspection and full control of the inspectors that come out from the IAEA to check it very often and to make sure that it doesn't go what we call beyond this level of enrichment. That will enable the Iranians to prove, to show or to demonstrate to their people that we won, and this is a great achievement for us because we keep all our capabilities. And just bear in mind that Iran is signed on the NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty, that allows a country to use what we call nuclear capabilities for civilian use, and they will take advantage of that, and they will claim that this is legal. On the other hand, the Americans will say we are making sure that Iran doesn't cross the threshold and will stay what we call at this low level, and nothing will endanger Israel anymore.
Indeed, but with that being said, of course, from 2006, despite being a signatory of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, from 2006 until 2015, Iran was barred under a succession of number of UN Security Council resolutions from enriching uranium. The 2008 Joint Plan of Action, not the comprehensive one, did not allow Iran to enrich uranium, despite Iran continuing to do so defiantly, which ultimately brought about the escalation of sanctions by the international community. And therefore, if America accepts under President Trump Iran to enrich uranium, he will effectively acquiesce to a Obama-type deal of a joint comprehensive plan of action. Mr. Oren, are we going to see, as Jake Sullivan said, a JCPOA 2.0?
Not at all. And, this is the difference between substance and salesmanship. If you watched President Trump addressing West Point the other day, he said that he himself won over Daesh, ISIS in 3 weeks' time. So it's all in the marketing. And if President Trump says that this is not just another iteration of the Obama era 2015 JCPOA, it is not going to be such an agreement. And the details will be less important than the fact that an agreement has been reached.
Indeed. Well, it doesn't matter the messaging. Ultimately, whatever happens, we will have to scrutinize this to the dot, because if the Iranians manage to break out to a nuclear weapon, it will be a new world altogether. But this is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank General Sofrin, Mr. Oren, and I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem, Shalom. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.